But how much can the definition of zine cover? And when is a zine not quite a zine? So this discussion is for where zines are, where they're going in today's world of fan culture. So I know I saw Mouna jump on. I see Raven. Do I see Leah? I'm not sure if Leah's coming. I think we also have Kate Simonsen. So they're going to be having a discussion. So if I think I can just hand it over to you, Mouna, if that's cool. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mouna. My pronouns are she, her. I have been making zines since about 2014. Well, zines and like indie comics and such. And I see Raven's on. Hello.
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let me put this in gallery view. There we go.
So yeah, my name is Raven Smith. I work at Phantom Comics here in DC. I have a kind of a strange relationship with fandom because I don't actively seek a whole lot of things out, but they just kind of find me, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I am ready to discuss some stuff.
Yeah. So a couple of points that that we can go over is, well, originally it was how you personally define zines, but we're at a zine fest, so I'm going to assume everybody has an idea of what a zine is or can be. Thank you for the thumbs up, at least, yeah. So I bring that up to say, nowadays there's a really interesting, as the description said, intermingling and overlapping between zines as we traditionally know them versus perfect bound anthologies. And I always thought that nowadays, and specifically fandom culture, the way it is now, how much overlap there is and how much there was a shift in the definition. Because if you were to look for, let's say, an anime fandom zine, I say that because I'm a huge anime fan myself. If you look for zines related to that, or any kind of anime or manga related thing, nowadays they'll usually be perfect bound, 50 or so people involved, and they'll have merch. They'll do fundraising to raise the funds to get it printed nicely. And it's a big thing. And I thought, wow, these are like big old anthologies that'll see it, that are the kinds of finish and the kinds of that kind of finish that I would see at something like the Small Press Expo up in Bethesda. And when I see those, for example, this was an anthology that I was in, Dirty Diamonds, issue number 5. This is referred to as an anthology because it's several people, it's full of comics and stories. And some might wonder, like, is what a lot of fandom communities doing now, is that an anthology? And the people in that communities I noticed they don't use that terminology to refer to them. They'll immediately call it a zine. And when I first started seeing that, I thought, that's really interesting. First, I was a little confused. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, oh, it kind of makes sense where that thought process came from. Raven, Kate, do you have any thoughts on that yourselves?
I would guess I'm the newest to zining. I started putting together mini zines in 2018. Depending on that definition, I was the kid you'd fold the construction paper and some notebook paper and you staple it together and you make your own sad, Sweet Valley High knockoff books with the circle cover. So for me, a lot of the appeal was if you have a piece of paper, you can make a zine. And starting out at DC Zine Fest, at Richmond Zine Fest, anytime I'm at the table next to somebody with books and I've got my folded pieces of paper with cutout pictures of my cats lovingly glue sticked in, it's kind of, it's a little demoralizing starting out. And I know from other things that I've done, everybody starts out at the equivalent of cut stuff up, glue it on, steal photocopies at work. I mean, I crochet. I taught myself the kalimba during quarantine, as we all do. And there is that initial stage. If we have time, I know part of the Star Wars theme now. So it's, I get that nobody gets to start out at excellent level, but the handmade process drew me to it. Is the TLDR. So seeing something you could find on a bookstore shelf is a little bit of a, what?
Okay, I see. Yeah, like, sorry, let me get back to the little list I made for talking points. Yeah, I definitely see what you mean by that. Sort of seeing those like almost bookstore level books next to stapled and folded printer paper zines, it's like there's sort of a disconnect in a way. And I think I kind of know where this phenomenon came from. Like I have a theory on it myself. And to me, it's a really educated guess. And based on the research that I've done, I think it tracks. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the term doujinshi. All right, if you're not familiar, I will explain it real quick. So it comes from Japanese, and it directly translates to self-published book or self-publishing. And so the doujinshi culture in Japan, what it's sort of well known for over here is fan comics. So if you were to search, like, I'm gonna throw this out, like Naruto doujinshi, what you would find is fan comics of like Naruto characters, usually romantic content because you're not going to get it in canon. And it'll be these independently made comics and stories, and sometimes written stories, but mostly visual stuff like art and comics. And they're made by fans, and they're printed by fans and distributed at doujinshi specific events and cons. And so pretty much anything that's like self-published over there is like a doujinshi, but it's more well known as like fan content. So when that terminology started coming to the West, we often associate it with like, oh, fan work. And so even if we go back to like the 60s and 70s, for example, if we look at Star Trek fandom, There was a huge zine culture around that. And I think with the evolution and existence of that, like Star Trek and sci-fi in general, fanzines combined with like anime and manga doujinshi, I think that that passage of time, that evolution, sort of created what certain people know of as zines today. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If I can chime in for a second, it's interesting for me as somebody that I do have like a small collection of zines, but as someone that hasn't made one before, I've always really found them fascinating because of just the way that various fandoms have kind of latched onto it. I know in the past at Fandom Comics, we've carried a couple of different fanzines from one of our mutual friends, Holly. She's made a bunch for various fandoms, for television shows, for books, for all kinds of stuff. And it's the way that people gravitate towards them is unlike anything that I've ever seen, especially when it comes to comics, because there's the nice thing of, oh, well, this is a recognizable thing that I know of, and then there's this second realization of, oh wow, this is brand new stuff that I've never experienced through this particular property. So I think that the customization of zines is definitely appealing to me and to a lot of our customers. I think that there's almost a freedom that comes along with zines, because it doesn't have to be super polished. It doesn't have to be, this big bound book. It can be something small and personal, and you can pass it off to your friends. And if it's a fandom related zine, then you can pass it off to other people in your fandom. And it can be kind of like a nice little time capsule too. If, say, you hop out of a fandom for however many months, years, or whatever, and then you pick it up later and you're like, oh wow, somebody really cared about this thing that we all cared about enough to make this tiny book. So I don't know, as like I said at the beginning of the chat, I'm somebody that has, like, I feel like I'm fandom adjacent, because there are obviously things that I really enjoy, but I don't usually actively seek them out. But zines in particular are one thing where if I see it, I'm just like, ooh, I gotta get that.
Yeah, that sort of like handmade touch to it is really special, So that, and the fact that historically zines have been really accessible, not expensive or even free. You can trade them. And the fact that they can be so easy to make, because if you have printer paper and you know how to fold, then, and have a stapler, you're good. But with a lot of these fan anthologies that are being done these days, we do have the accessibility to make a nicer finish, because there are printing companies out there like Greco, and that's the one I use anyway, and what's that other one? Kablam, and other services like that. And those are primarily used for indie comics. Like, let's say you make a webcomic and you want to get it published or get it nicely glossy and printed like that. You might go to a comics printing service like one of the ones I mentioned. And I think that's also a factor, that accessibility to those, and also the rise of webcomics.
Yes.
Yeah, the rise of webcomics, and this is slightly related, but stuff like Tapas and Webtoon, and online comics that you can scroll with on your phone. like ones that are specifically made for that medium. But yeah, that accessibility of printing companies, I think, is also a factor. Also, the fact that there are Kickstarters for art books and comic anthologies, I think that's a huge factor as well.
Oh, definitely.
Mhm.
I it was a couple of years ago, but I definitely backed the fan anthology for the show Hannibal because I'm the worst. But it's the production and everything for that book it still stuns me because I mean like they had like gold on the edges and there was like raised print, so it was like almost like a tactile thing, and it was a whole production and it was still really cool. But looking back on it, I'm just like, wow, y'all, we really did that.
Wait, was this through Kickstarter or Indiegogo?
Yeah.
What?
It was through Kickstarter.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I always thought that, like, for fan projects, that using Kickstarter would be kind of a tricky situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Kickstarter has a thing about fan-related content for perhaps copyright issues, I believe. But I need to look more into that bit. Because whenever I see or hear about fan stuff being made on Kickstarter, I'm like, oh, what?
Yeah, I think this one was a particularly interesting case because I remember it had gotten so big that there were that like people that actually worked on the show were tweeting about it, and Brian Fuller was bringing it up. Like I think he backed it and everything. So I think Kickstarter was like, we'll look the other way on this because it is so huge and it's got such crossover appeal. I don't really know what the end number was. It was some ridiculous number. On the amount that they pulled in for it. But yeah, it definitely is one of those things where it's like you have zines and then you have fan anthologies and then you have like these other things that just blow up, but at the core of them is still just that deep understanding that this isn't necessarily made for money so much as it's made so that all of us can kind of shout directly out into the void about this thing that we like. I thought about it and I was like, it's almost like I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, you guys. So it just made me think of the one emotion where you can have your villager just kind of shout and go, ah. So yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, that's sort of, we did this together and it looks great kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just opened up the chat, by the way, to see some of the comments and statements people have made.
You can get the Hannibal zine.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I didn't quite catch what you said, Kate.
Oh, somebody's posted a link to the a Hannibal zine of note. I don't know if it's the one Raven mentioned.
I think it is.
Oh, it's on Gumroad. Thanks, Kendra.
Also, yeah, Sandra, with your huge Stucky anthology.
There was a period of time where our friends were literally just buying me Stucky pornography. I believe I received 3 porn zines for my law school graduation.
Amazing.
If somebody can put like an explanation for an old person in here, because I'm thinking of the truck stops you find in the South and am now very confused.
So I think, are you talking about the anthologies that Andrea's talking about, or?
When I hear Stucky, I think like you stop and you get pecan logs and.
Oh, that's Stephen Bucky from Captain America.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the pairing name.
Yep, just smush them names together.
Yep, I love pairing names. They're so amusing. So something else I wanted to bring up was what y'all think the effect that this crossover has on the traditional zine making community. But before we get into that in more detail, something I wanted to mention was that I'm currently running a fan anthology project right now.
Hey.
Yay, thank you. And I wanted to talk a little about my experience involving that. And someone just popped in on the Zoom call who's actually a contributor to said project. Hi, Amani.
Hi.
So the reason I bring this up is because sort of doing the promotion for it and the communication with the contributors about it has been really interesting. So it's almost like I had to code switch in a way. Because the fandom that this project is for a relatively new thing. So a lot of the fans getting into it might be a bit younger, like in their early 20s, and some of them in their teens. The fandom specifically is Hypnosis Mike.
Oh.
Are you familiar with it, Raven?
Vaguely. Like I'm like the name sounds familiar, so I'm just like, what is it? What is it?
It's my current obsession. I'll tell you more about it sometime. But it's about rap battles. Anyway, so when I was opening applications for it, because like I had a whole application process. Since this is my first project of this scale, and I did an interest check beforehand, like who would be interested, how many people would be interested, whether as a contributor or if you'd like to buy it. And I sort of based everything off those results. Or I also based my expectations on those results. Like, okay, we may not get a lot of sales, but that is 100% okay. It's all the money, any being made toward this is going to charity. So I decided I'm not rejecting anyone. So everyone who applies is getting in. I'm basing all my judgment off of concept alone, rather than skill level. So when I was promoting this, I often called it a zine when I was talking about it on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. But when I would talk about, I made a Facebook page for publications like this. And on Facebook, however, I would refer to it as a project or a fan anthology. Sometimes I'd use the word zine, but I would incorporate the words project and fan anthology as well. Even though it's still the same project, but I was sort of adjusting based on audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted it to register with the people who are newer to this, the people who may not have had experience with like original content anthologies that you might see at SPX and things like that. Someone found a resource on how to organize a fanzine. Thank you. So going back to one of the questions I asked earlier, which was, what effect do you think this phenomenon in this evolution, like what effect does it have on the traditional zine making community? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Raven or Kate?
I mean, I think that at least from my experience of interacting with some of the folks that would come to the like the fandom creator workshops that we would do, when people were learning how to make zines, it actually eventually started to make them more curious about other types of media. Like it's very common to see people just kind of be like, oh, well, I made this zine and it looks really cool. What if I made a comic of this thing? Oh, what if I made a book? And I think it's a really great resource for people that are just dipping a toe into trying to do something creative that they might not have done before.
Like traditional zines are?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that once people realize that they don't have to stick to a specific kind of blueprint for what like any kind of media but specifically zines are, their eyes get big and they're like, wow, I can make a thing about this, and it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be, you know, super polished, it doesn't have to be anything but what I want it to be.
I had that same feeling when I started out.
It's freeing in a way, and I know from talking with the people that come for our comics workshops and things like that, it can definitely be a very daunting thing, but it's also very rewarding for them, because at the end of however long we usually do our workshops for, people would usually go, oh wow, I didn't think I could make that, or I didn't realize that was so easy to do. And I think that zines as a whole are just so inviting, because like you said earlier, all you really need is, you know, some paper and a stapler and the ability to fold it, and you got a thing. So
you don't even need a stapler.
Yeah,
I have argued with the friend who got me into zines on this, where one of us is more cutting and folding tolerant, but scissors and ripping ability. But I kind of came into, I agree with Raven completely. I came in from the opposite direction, where I had started working on a collection of short stories and decided I have a full-time job. I don't want to pitch this. I don't want to deal with somebody else's notes and like, well, you need this, you can't put this together. And so I said, well, I have a printer. I can look up that how to make an eight-fold mini zine. I am just going to make this in zines so I can get it out there, small scale, self-publish it, and do an existing creative project the way I want to do it.
Yeah. I think that I agree with both of you, that sort of really freeing feeling when you realize, oh wow, I can just make this myself. I have paper, I have a printer, I have staplers and scissors. I can do this and make it about anything without feeling bound by like, is someone gonna like it? Will it sell? Well, if you put the passion behind it, then first of all, it doesn't always matter if it sells or not, but if it resonates with people, that's one of the best parts.
Yeah.
And also being able to just shout and, like, for lack of a better word from me, fangirl about, holy shit, sorry I curse, if I'm allowed to curse here. You really like this thing as well, or you're really interested in this thing that I'm interested in. Oh my God, that's great. Another side of this, though, the effect that the change, and so not even just a change, but a split. There seems to be like division of what a zine is, because in modern fan culture, the people, a lot of the people, like especially younger artists, who think that zines, there are many who think that zines have to be perfect bound and have to look glossy and professional. I think that this phenomenon has an effect on accessibility and communication. The accessibility part is who can make a zine. As a lot of us know, everybody and anybody. But to a lot of these younger audiences, they'll think, well, I need the money and I need an existing engaged and interested audience. Like, no, you don't, not really.
Nope.
Yeah. But there are people who are intimidated because they think that's what they need. And also, another aspect of the accessibility is that when you have a perfect bound zine with merchandise, like, I didn't mention that much, but some people will make merchandise as stretch goals, like charms, bookmarks, even standees. Like, that's crazy. I think it's really cool, but it's also like, whoa. The accessibility part in this regard is that it'll cost more money to buy. So I've seen some upwards of more than $20. Some even 30.
Dang.
Yeah. And the fact that they'll call these zines isn't inherently bad, but I think it can be a bit of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the communication, it sort of segues into the communication problem. Apparently, sometime on Twitter, there was a whole discourse about like how to make zines, who can make zines, stuff like that. And
what?
Yeah, like there are people who might live in like Europe, for example, like a Swedish zine maker who's used to making zines that like traditional zines out of paper, staples, and scissors and stuff like that. Having a conversation with another zinester in the United States, for example, and saying, no, my zine is this perfect bound thing. And there could be an argument, this has happened, arguments that break out over what is and isn't a zine. And part of that has to do with lack of exposure. Like, I think, like the lack of exposure to the smaller handmade zines and the lack of vocabulary to refer to things that are bound like this as an anthology, I think.
I feel like I could probably rant about Twitter discourse and all kinds of art and stuff for days, but it just feels, it feels so counterintuitive to what the main goal is. It's like, you want to make a thing. You don't have to bust out the printing press to do it. You just make a thing that makes you happy. Yeah. And yeah, you can sell it or you can make it as fancy as you want, but it just, at the end of the day, the whole point is you made a thing and that thing means something to you and it may mean something to other people. So if it's got ragged edges and it's printed off center and it looks kind of weird and you spilt coffee on it, then whatever. Life is short. Make the thing.
It will make you happy.
Yeah.
Actually, I had in another window pulled up a couple of examples. Well, I found one example of a project that one of my friends ran, and it was referred to as a zine the whole time. And this one was perfect bound, had I think over 30 contributors, and there was also merch. let's see, I'll try to share my screen on this. So what I'm going to show is this one fanzine, and also the project that I'm currently running. So this was the promotional Twitter account made for a zine, a fanzine of the manga and anime series Banana Fish, if anyone's heard of that. Sorry, I can't see the okay, now I can. I can see the grid now, sorry. So this included illustrations, fan fiction. As I said, it was also perfect bound. There was merchandise and things like that. And when I saw this, I'm like, holy shit, this is an anthology. And it's not to say that like anthologies are better than zines or more higher quality than zines or whatever, because that can vary. And that can also imply like a bit of elitism, you know? So like, I was always a little confused as to why the word anthology was never really used, and there's not necessarily or inherently something wrong with them not using that vocabulary, but I just think that wording hasn't crossed over. Oh yeah, go on, Kate.
I'd also wonder if some of my reaction to this is that I am very primarily a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy drawing. I'm not particularly good at it. Feel free to encourage me, but you're wrong. It's like I perfected stick figures early and never moved past that. So for someone like, there's definitely a book, novel, short story collection, anthology versus zine distinction in my head, and there's at least for me, producing something like this, which for text-based, there's, I guess, less of a temptation to want beautiful glossy printing when my concern is legibility. How does the layout look? I mean, it's either you can read the text is either accessible, a font most people can read, a size most people can read,
yeah,
or it's not, versus the sort of perfect bound quality printing. I think that's also making me more hesitant in the definition, because if my handwriting were better, I could just sit down and do everything by hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are good points. Let's see. I'm going to click on over to, this is the project that I'm currently running. And if you notice at the title, I call it a zine, because I noticed that on Tumblr, especially ever since the mass exodus out of Tumblr a couple years ago, people have been using Tumblr as home bases for fan anthologies and projects like that, because it's really image friendly. You're able to make like subpages and stuff like that and tag things, so it can be really legible in that way, and that's why I decided to do this. But I also use a Twitter account and a Facebook page and Instagram page to be able to promote it. And I find that referring to it as a zine for certain audiences has helped. But also using both terms has also helped, I would say. to be able to get the word out about the project. And like I said, the funds related to it are going to charity. So I was able to I guess get more attention to it by calling it a zine. Let's see, we have about 20 minutes left. Let me stop the screen share. I'm gonna check the chat real quick.
I want to know about the fashion zine on dress-up games, because if that is Kiss Dolls, I need you to make it. I will DM you for, mailing it to me. If anyone is still making Kiss Dolls, I will take that link as well.
It was mostly based on games like Love Nikki.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. Mobile dress-up games, good content. Does anyone have? Oh yeah.
I was just gonna say. Oh, sorry.
we need the talking stick.
Yeah. I was just gonna say. I wonder if anybody's made a zine about just like the explosion with Pit Crew and those icon makers.
I love those things.
They're so good. I made one last night, and just they're so fun and customizable. I just love them a lot.
I actually had a zine idea for like, if anyone's familiar with like otome games, like romance games, where you, the protagonist, are usually pursuing or interacting with a bunch of love interests, or yeah. So I thought for since a lot of these are made in Japan, and Japan has certain beauty standards that lean toward lighter skin, I thought what would be a really interesting collection would be like Black girls who play otome games, drawing themselves as a character in the universe of that story.
Yeah.
Because like, I play A3, I play that one game that's like demons based on the 7 deadly sins, and I guess you're pursuing them.
I've heard of that one. I haven't played it yet, but I've heard of that one.
There's so many ads for it, and they're basically like, hey, you're horny. I'm sure you want to fuck Satan, right? Like, this is really direct. But like, whenever characters in those games start getting descriptive, it's like, no, you're really taking me out of this because you're saying, oh, you're like, your pale skin, like your smooth hair. It's like, oh, great. Oh no.
Why would you do that in a visual? The whole point is you're looking in. It can be.
It's because it's for the ones that tend to be made in Japan, because they're the primary audience is a Japanese audience. So it's like, I get it, but when it comes over to like Western audiences, it's like, okay, like I get it, but it still kind of stings.
Yeah. Another topic that I could probably just make a thesis on, but I won't rant. I won't do it.
Does anyone have any questions about our topic, by the way? Because I'd love to hear if y'all have any questions, comments, or thoughts.
While people
5-minute warning.
Just while people are thinking about their questions, for anybody wanting their fashion game zine, all the cute, girly, sparkly stuff, I started making G1 My Little Pony fanzines because I did not see any. I don't know if I just missed when all the people my age were taking over the Zine Fest, but I was like, there is not enough girly fandom stuff here. So
yeah. Oh my
I'm
god,
like,
really?
Sailor Moon, make those. Yes, exactly, Jennifer. More sparkly, girly stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's what I
Not
want to do with my
My
new
Little
zine press.
Pony. We're taking it back.
I need somebody to make a Princess Guinevere and the Jewel Riders. Like,
Okay, my best friend since high school really loves it, and she loves any content related to it. I'll pass that along to her.
yeah. Cause like I mentioned that show to somebody the other day and they were like, what's that? And I'm just like, it wasn't a fever dream. I remember it. It happened. So yeah. It needs somebody to do these deep cut shows from the heydays of the 80s.
And oh, Princess Tutu, hell yeah. I had this one idea for an anthology that was like or a solo zine. I might do one or the other, I'm not sure, but like self-inserts from childhood. Like I had my Full Metal Alchemist self, I had my Yu Yu Hakusho self, I had like 3 Sonic personas. It's like, I should just revisit all of them. I had a Tokyo Mew Mew self-insert, like, then I outgrew doing them, and it's like, what if I just drew them all again, just to make my younger self happy? And whoever else might be interested in seeing my old-ass fandoms as a child. Thank you for the encouragement in the chat, y'all.
You know your audience. You're just waiting for that one thing to tip the scales. It's just like, oh no, now I need a zine about that.
Yeah. And it's weird where the inspiration can come from too, because like when I was doing the interest check for the project I'm currently doing, the interest check was actually about 2 projects related to the same fandom, both related to Hypnosis Mike. And my 2 ideas were homages to real life rap album covers, and that's the project I'm currently running.
Ooh.
Yeah. So like it's recreating the album covers using characters from Hypnosis Mike. The other idea though was a character inspired recipe zine.
I love those.
Thank you. That was actually the more popular idea, the recipe zine. But I thought that's gonna take a lot more time, a lot more moving parts. I'm probably gonna have to, I want it to be like a physical book because it's a recipe book.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably wouldn't want to do saddle stitch. I'd probably want to do spiral bound. So it's like, that's going to be a lot more complicated. So let's put that on the back burner. But I know that there's interest right now. That's great. And I got the idea for that because one of the characters in Hypnosis Mike, his favorite drink is cream soda. And I thought, soda floats. Wait, what if I did a thing?
Kind of dovetailing off of that, shout out to, like, as somebody said in the chat, shout out to Team KK for their recipe zines, and also and those have honestly been like their zines in particular, and I've told Kendra and Kat this all the time, that they're some of our more popular things from our indie shelf that we sell. And on like a personal note, I always love and appreciate all of the wrestling zines that they make. Mm-hmm. I do have all the rock ones, and I do love the cooking recipe ones, like the wrestling recipe ones, because those are real great. And I've passed those along to people that I interact with in like the DC area of wrestling community, and they've just been like, oh man, that's real good, I can make some stuff. So zines have crossover in a lot of places that people wouldn't necessarily think that they would, because again, it's just oh, you're a fan of something else and your fandom doesn't necessarily look like my fandom, but it's still a fandom because, you know, people make things for it. You make pins and hats and all kinds of stuff. So why not cooking things? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love and cherish those Kendra and Kat. Those are my favorites.
You know they're
Good
cool
content.
because we couldn't get them on the panel.
Yeah.
We're guest starring, so hi everyone. Thank you for the kind words.
Buy their stuff.
Yeah, I'll say that my advice to everyone is just do it, because that's what we started with, and it's been awesome. We've met so many cool people,
Yeah.
and it's
Zines were part of what got us into wrestling.
so. So yeah, true story. But yeah, being able to do zines and comics, it's just been great. And again, thanks to DC Zine Fest actually for being the first zine fest that we tabled at, and it's been rad. So yeah, once you got some zines out there, everyone, then you can start doing.
Then you're hooked, and you just keep making more and more zines.
Yeah, that's the only downside of zines. You
doesn't
can't
stop.
So thanks. That's our piece of advice.
Guest appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Guest appearance. All right.
The moral of the story is anyone can make a zine. Just do it. Go for it. Don't let your dreams be dreams. Let your dreams be zines.
I need that stitched on like
I
a
love
pillow or
that.
something.
Yeah.
Don't let your
Improvise and very
dreams be
powerful.
zines.
I was gonna say thanks for the next year's button or sticker idea.
Yeah. That was actually a great way to wrap up the panel.
Thank
Any
you.
final thoughts from anyone, or last words from you, Mouna, or Raven, or Kate?
Kate, you go first.
Somebody asked, I saw we did get a question in between everyone now being empowered to make their fandom dream that they always said, I can't get a Kickstarter together. I tried to quickly find it, and my Google foo is failing, but if you just Google image search how to make a zine, there is that one-page illustration of how to make a folded mini zine. You basically, if I can find one that doesn't have crude drawings on it, you take a piece of paper, fold it in half, fold it in half again, fold it in half again, and you get your scissors. Or
Oh yeah,
hand.
DC Zine Fest has a thing on this on their site.
Find that. That's how you get started. It can be anything. If you doubt your talents, here is my artistic ability. Here is an angry Corona. I guess trigger warning for modern times, but
Raven,
anyone can do it.
Raven, do you have any final thoughts?
I would just say it's like with all fandoms, if you feel weird about a particular thing in a fandom, like, oh, I don't think anybody's gonna like this if I make a thing, just slap that voice. Slap it, because you can make a thing and you will find other people that will enjoy that thing. It's Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come, and they will usually have a bunch of recommendations for other stuff for it. So much like with comics, there are fans of everything. So don't let your dreams be zines.
No, let them be zine. Let your dreams
Oh,
be
wait. Yeah, let them be zines.
People at when I'm tabling, people are either immediately sucked in and like, oh my God, or they keep walking. So there is somebody. Set up your table so there's somebody's you'll know immediately because they're just like, that thing.
My final thoughts are make zines, don't let anything stop you, and also pre-orders are open for my current project. If you donate to the Black Lives Matter Fund, the Oprah Project, or the Bail Fund, that'll count as a pre-order, and if you donate $6 or more, you get wallpapers, and it'll be great. See my virtual table. There's a link to all the virtual tables for DC Zine Fest on DC Zine Fest site. So thank you so much for letting us hold this panel, and thank you for coming, everybody. We appreciate it. We get a mute applause. I love